and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm Catherine Seltner in our Washington, D.C. studio. Here's what you can expect in this show. Pope Francis makes a bold statement about the death penalty. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro unravels popular abortion arguments. And this.
We were thrown into a situation that was less than ideal, and we chose to fight for him.
We interview the Pickering family and hear how their extreme micro-preemie son Micah has a big role in the pro-life movement. Little Micah is the namesake behind Micahs Law, the recent nickname of the pain-capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which would ban abortions at 20 weeks. This brings us to our top story, as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Micahs Law is supported by the Republican members.
It's supported by virtually all of my members, and we expect to have a vote on it at some point.
Those comments came at a White House press briefing earlier this week when EWTN News Nightly's White House correspondent Mark Irons asked about support for Micahs Law, or the pain-capable bill. The bill was introduced into the Senate earlier this month by pro-life lawmakers.
This is an opportunity for us to be able to basically catch up for the rest of the world, where the rest of the world has already gone, recognizing that a child at the 5th month of development is a viable child.
We're joined now by Senator James Lankford from Capitol Hill. Senator, thank you for your time.
Glad to be able to be with you.
Senator, you've already voiced support for the pain-capable bill. What is your argument in favor of it?
You know what, the pain-capable bill is one of these very simple bills that people try to make much more complicated than it really is. It answers the question, will the United States at least have abortion laws like the rest of the world does? The rest of the world does not allow elective abortion after 5 months of pregnancy, with the exception of countries like North Korea and China that are so atrocious on their human rights violations. The rest of the world also doesn't allow, if an abortion is botched, for a child to be fully delivered and then to allow the child to die in front of a group of medical professionals that are standing around watching it die. No one does that but the United States. So the pain-capable bill says, why don't we at least have abortion laws as restrictive as the rest of the world does, and not have American laws that are much more open on the death of children in the womb than the rest of the world. It also deals with this basic principle: is a child when they can feel pain? I believe a child is at conception, but we should at least agree when a child is feeling pain and not to have to experience the trauma of abortion as well.
We've seen this bill go to the Senate before and it get knocked down. Do you have any hope that this time it will pass?
We are going to work very hard in the Senate to be able to bring this up and to try to bring it up in a reasoned argument, to say there's no reason the United States should have abortion laws that allow the death of children after 5 months of gestation. So we're going to have that argument. I think there are multiple individuals that are appalled by the fact that America still allows full delivery of children during a botched abortion, and that child then dies on the table in front of everyone after delivery. That's an area that is very, very difficult for the people that are pro-abortion to be able to defend. They'll talk about tissue. They'll talk about it's a fetus. They don't believe it's a child until the mom declares it's a child. But when we look into the womb, we see 10 fingers and 10 toes and a beating heart and a functioning nervous system and DNA that is different than the mom and different than the dad. I think at a minimum we should be able to agree that that child is a child after they have feeling and after they can actually function in what the Supreme Court declared in the 1970s as viability. Why wouldn't we all agree that's definitely a child at that point?
Your Democrat colleagues, Senators Manchin, Donnelly, and Casey, voted in favor of the pain-capable bill 2 years ago. In recent months, we've seen Democratic leaders openly debate on whether the party should be more open to pro-lifers. Do you see this as a unique time in which more Democratic politicians can vote pro-life, or will they face too much backlash?
Well, the Republican Party is very open. There are a lot of open perspectives there. It's a big tent party with a lot of perspectives. I would hope for Democrats they would be a big tent party as well and wouldn't have some sort of litmus test to say you have to be pro-abortion to also be a Democrat. Unfortunately, that's been the trend of the last several years as Democrats have pushed out more and more individuals simply because they're pro-life. So I would hope that this would be a moment for Democrats to be able to rethink that position and to be able to say you can be pro-life and still be a Democrat. But we'll see what their own party presses them to be able to do in the days ahead.
Senator James Lankford, thank you for your time.
Great. Glad to be able to be with you.
For reaction and continued analysis, we turn now to our expert. Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List, joins us in studio. Marjorie, grateful to have you.
Hey, Catherine, always.
What did you make of what Senator Lankford had to say to us about his Democratic colleagues and their support of the pain-capable bill?
Yes, I mean, he's such a great friend of the pro-life movement. He's very astute in his observations. One thing that we have seen very much is the debate within the Democratic Party right now about whether this should be a litmus test or not. Nancy Pelosi, the head of the DCCC, the election arm of the Democratic House members, about whether this should be a litmus test. We're seeing a crack in the armor of the Democratic Party on this, and I think this particular bill, the pain-capable bill, the Micahs Law, actually is a moment where we can see something beautiful happening within that party, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there.
Potentially more Democratic votes.
That's right. That's right.
You called it Micahs Law. It has gotten that nickname. Why do you think this 5-year-old's boy is such a powerful face for this bill?
Well, I think you've seen him. You know, you look at him and you think this bill can be nothing other than Micahs Law, because you look at him and you say this boy's peers and this boy's friends that should be in this world, that were born, could have been born around the same time, ought to be here. He's the beautiful face of it.
Turning topics a bit, Senator Lankford is also behind a proposal to change how the Senate confirms presidential nominees to federal judgeships and the executive branch. Why is this so important, specifically for pro-life initiatives? Yeah,
this is a huge and often hidden battle in D.C., especially now. The president has brought up 53 nominees. Only 7 have been confirmed. One of them, the Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, and we have 160 openings to fill. This is so important because our pro-life laws get continually challenged by the other side, and we care. What is the court going to look like that within which they're going to get a decision made? It really matters who is listening to that case, whether they care about the rule of law and the Constitution or whether they have a political agenda or not.
The Supreme Court and then all those other courts.
Yes.
Marjorie, I want to get your take on this next pro-life story right now as well. The Department of Health and Human Services makes a major pro-life change in its new strategic plan, stating it serves and protects Americans at every stage of life, beginning at conception. The phrase beginning at conception was previously not included. So Marjorie, how significant is this?
Well, I think, we've been involved in this for a little while, and ideas have consequences. The idea that a person begins at conception has a consequence. It has a consequence in law. It has a consequence in actions. Therefore, for HHS to take this on as a mantra is a beautiful step. It means a lot. We are looking for the actions that follow that. We'll be following what that means.
See that mantra taken into action.
Amen. Yeah.
Marjorie, thank you for your insight and expertise on these wide range of pro-life topics this week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Many significant pro-life strides happen in the courts. And while the Supreme Court is important, high court justices take less than 1% of all U.S. cases. This means the courts at all levels of the judicial branch play a crucial role for pro-life initiatives. President Trump has been nominating well-qualified jurists at all those levels, but senators are blocking the highly qualified nominees, and there are now more judicial vacancies since President Trump took office. This gridlock needs to end, and it's time pro-lifers get involved. Here's this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com. Tell the Senate to stop blocking President Trump's judicial nominees from being confirmed. Simply fill in your information and send in your message. The courts play an important role for our pro-life initiatives, and we need judges who will faithfully interpret the Constitution, because the Constitution does not require abortion. This gridlock and abuse of Senate rules needs to end. We need the Senate to act and fill the court vacancies at all levels. That way, our court system can get to work. The confirmation of Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court was considered a success for the pro-life movement, but we need to have an impact on the lower courts as well. Those courts will hear most of the pro-life cases, and confirmed judges have a long-lasting legacy. Pro-lifers, we need you to take action, and this is how you can do it. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com and tell the Senate to stop blocking President Trump's judicial nominees from being confirmed. Turning now to more pro-life news, we go to EWTN's Valeria Longhi with the top headlines.
40 Days for Life Colombia kicked off and will continue until November 4th. People from all over the South American country joined together to pray for an end to abortion. Our sister agency, Así Prensa, reports the pro-life campaign, which takes place twice a year, had such a success in the past, the country's abortion leader, Pro Familia, asked Planned Parenthood International in 2016 to help contain and reduce the effects of 40 Days for Life. Abortion has been legal in Colombia since 2006 in cases where the mother's life is at risk, in cases of rape or incest, and in certain birth defect cases. The Catholic Church in Bolivia is responding to the recent expansion of legal cases for abortion.
Que ninguna obra de salud de la Iglesia que reporte o no al sistema público de salud se prestará a quitar la vida de los más inocentes.
That's Monsignor José Fuentes Cano, Secretary General for the Bolivian Bishops' Conference, saying hospitals run by the Catholic Church in Bolivia will not take away the lives of the most innocent, reaffirming the Church's stance on abortion. The country's clergy is also concerned about the possibility of losing their Catholic hospitals to the Bolivian government.
Si deve affermare con forza che la condanna alla pena de morte.
Pope Francis condemning the death penalty, calling it an inhumane measure that humiliates human dignity. The Holy Father told a gathering in Rome last week the Catechism of the Catholic Church should significantly revise its treatment of the death penalty. He also made it clear capital punishment is in itself contrary to the gospel because it voluntarily decides to suppress a human life. The Catechism currently supports using non-lethal means to defend and protect people's safety from aggressors and says necessary execution cases are very rare, if not practically non-existent. Valeria Longhi, EWTN Pro-Life Weekly.
Thank you, Valeria, for those pro-life headlines. Our next guest is known for his ability to leave people speechless when debating tough topics, including abortion. Take a look.
Planned Parenthood is supposed to prevent abortions. Because, Planned Parenthood doesn't prevent abortions. They perform hundreds of thousands of abortions a year. They perform 300,000 abortions a year. They're the leading abortion mill in the United States.
Evidence for that, though.
That they perform 300,000 abortions a year from Planned Parenthood. That's my evidence.
Ben Shapiro is editor-in-chief of The Daily Wire and host of the political online podcast, The Ben Shapiro Show. He joins us now from Los Angeles, California. Ben, thanks for being with us.
Sure, thanks so much.
Ben, you give a lot of speeches, often on college campuses, and it seems you get questions about abortion quite often. Is there a reoccurring theme you've noticed with these questions on these different campuses?
Well, I think that the theme that I get the most is young women who suggest that I am somehow invading their bodily autonomy if I am pro-life, that if I want to preserve the life of the unborn, that this is somehow a threat to their rights as an independent woman. I don't think it's a particularly strong argument, particularly because most of the people who state it generally don't bother to acknowledge the other side of the argument. They fail to acknowledge that there is a child in there, that there is something apart from a polyp. And once they are made aware of this, then their argument sort of falls apart. So they have to ignore part of the argument in order to make their argument stand up. And when I expose that, it doesn't tend to work too well.
The rights of the unborn. I want to address the New York Times op-ed about you that ran last week. Some have called it a hit piece. And in it, writer Jane Coaston says you have hollow bravery, calls your campus speeches shadow boxing, and if you wanted to be genuinely brave, you challenge, quote, some of the wrong-headed ideas held by your right-wing fans. How do you respond to that? And do you see all the students you meet as coastal elites who have never left their bubble, as she calls them?
No, and I think there are a number of ways to respond to that. Number one, I've never really attributed bravery to myself. I don't think that it's brave to walk on a campus and talk to kids. I think it's brave to be a member of the military. I think it's brave to be a cop. I think it's brave to be a firefighter. I don't think it's brave for me to walk with a security team at my side onto a stage. If I thought that I was going to get shot and murdered, then I probably wouldn't do it. So I don't consider myself part of that group anyway. As far as the idea that I'm not doing any good, one of the reasons that you have these debates is the same reason that Socrates had debates with random people on the street. I mean, the purpose is to elucidate ideas and bring ideas to the forefront. Some of these students are offended and easily offended, and some of them are melted as snowflakes. But the truth is, I've debated people on the left side of the spectrum my entire career, including very prominent people. I mean, Cenk Uygur, Sally Kohn, the head of the Seattle NAACP. I mean, I debate people on the left on a routine basis who are not college students. And going on college campuses is a great way for me to speak to students who, number one, feel they've been abandoned if they're on the right, and number two, students on the left who've never heard this point of view at all otherwise. So it was a very weird piece, and I was sort of put back by it, especially because of the claim that I don't say anything that sometimes is uncomfortable with my own listeners, considering that I spent the last 2 years not really openly supporting President Trump. In fact, I didn't vote for him during the election cycle. My listeners, by and large, did. So I've been pretty critical of people who are supposedly on my side when I think that they're wrong. So it's just a very weird piece altogether.
Ben, you are a graduate of Harvard Law School. You were the youngest nationally syndicated columnist in the U.S. You're a smart man. What convinced you ultimately to become pro-life yourself? So
it really began with science for me. So I'm a religious Jew. Religious Jews are pro-life. So from a biblical standpoint, the support for the pro-life position is pretty strong, but it really is science that I find to be the best argument and the most convincing argument. And as you see 3D and 4D ultrasounds, as you see the development of a child in the womb, as you realize that every argument against the pro-life position is based on false premises that could be applied to fully grown adults, then you begin to see that either the line is drawn with conception or isn't drawn at all, and that tends to be the way the argument goes.
Ben, because you're known for your ability to answer tough questions, we thought we'd do a quick rapid-fire Q&A with you on common abortion claims our viewers might face. How does that sound?
Sure, sounds good.
All right, claim one, abortion is only 3% of Planned Parenthood's business, and they do a lot of good for women. Your response?
Yeah, so number one, that's not true. As far as 3% of their business, supposedly the idea is that 3% of all services provided by Planned Parenthood are abortions. But they include in those services things like handing out condoms, things like regular screenings. The fact is that of the actual operations performed by Planned Parenthood, something like 95% of all of those operations are done by Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood provides 300 to 400,000 abortions a year. So it all depends on the metric that you're using, but to suggest that Planned Parenthood is not in the abortion business is simply false.
Claim two, a fetus in the first trimester doesn't have moral value.
Again, if you want to make the claim that a fetus doesn't have moral value in the first trimester, you'd have to explain when a human being develops moral value. Is it with a heartbeat? Because there are plenty of people who are living off a pacemaker. Is it with lung function? Because there are plenty of people who are on iron lungs. Is it with brain function? Because you're asleep, right, sometimes, and when you're a newborn baby, your brain function is not particularly high. So when exactly do you draw this line? And if you draw the line anywhere other than conception, you have to explain why it doesn't apply to people who you would consider a normal human being who shouldn't be killed.
Finally, claim three, and this is a common one. It doesn't matter what you believe about abortion. You don't have the right to impose your pro-life views on another woman's body. How do you respond to that?
Now, that's just as foolish as arguing that it's none of my business whether you beat a dog in your backyard. It's not my dog. I don't have anything to do with your backyard. If you decide that the dog is worthy of beating, what's to stop you from doing it? Am I the great moral arbiter? The answer is we make these moral judgments all the time when we see a violation of moral law, and it is a violation of moral law to kill another human being, which is why we have murder laws.
Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
When we come back.
This isn't something that you're asking to deliver your baby at 22 or 23 weeks. It's just something that you're faced.
Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. We are called to defend and safeguard human life, especially in the mother's womb, in infancy, old age, and physical or mental disability. That's a tweet from our Holy Father, Pope Francis, only a few days ago. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Seltner. Teen Vogue, a magazine that markets itself for young women, carelessly spreads its pro-abortion stance once again. In a piece promising to give the facts, Teen Vogue recently ran an article called How the Abortion Pill Works. The abortion pill, which is mifepristone used in combination with misoprostol, kills an unborn child. An increasing number of women are opting for this medical abortion and aborting their babies in their own home. The Teen Vogue article claims taking the abortion pill is, quote, actually like having a period, and the writer claims pro-life efforts are senseless and deadly. This article for teens paints the abortion pill as easy, safe, and effective. But this article is riddled with half-truths, trying to equate bleeding from taking a life with a woman's natural fertility cycle. The pro-life group Live Action responded to the deceitful article with quotes from 15 women who explained what the abortion pill is really like. One woman said, "Nothing had prepared me for the searing, gripping, squeezing pain that ripped through my belly." Another woman shares, "It was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And secondly, I saw my baby. She looked so human already. I had no idea that my baby was so big after only 2 months." Teen Vogue, you are not looking out for your female readers. That is clear. Taking an abortion pill can be even more traumatic for women than a surgical abortion because they can see their own child in the process. This is a tragedy that cannot be normalized. If you or someone you know has had an abortion, there is a network of people who can help you cope with your trauma. Go to hopeafterabortion.com. There is also another key factor that Teen Vogue left out of their so-called Get the Facts article. If you have taken the first abortion pill already, you may still be able to reverse its effects and have your baby safely. Go to abortionpillreversal.com to find out more. That article is another reminder of today's pervasive culture of death, but remember, there is something you can do to counter our culture. Follow this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com and tell the Senate to stop blocking President Trump's judicial nominees from being confirmed. The Pickering family has been thrown into the spotlight recently as the pain-capable Unborn Child Protection Act is nicknamed Micahs Law after their 5-year-old son. The humble family from Iowa never expected they'd help to advance pro-life laws, but they believe it's something God is calling them to do. Here is this week's Pro-Life Focus. Born weighing just over 1 pound, little Micah Pickering's start to life didn't come as planned.
It was scary, it was heartbreaking. I mean, we had to just cry out to God.
First-time parents Danielle and Clayton Pickering rushed to the hospital in 2012 when Danielle's water broke months early. Their child was born at just 20 weeks or 22 weeks gestation.
Right away, he had to be intubated. I mean, put a ventilator down his throat and inflate those lungs. Those lungs were just super, super weak.
You could see his suffering from the very moment.
Micah was in the NICU for 128 days before going home. 5 years later, he's a young boy who recently started kindergarten. He requires a little more sleep than the average kid and had a speech delay. But Micah's parents say his health today is great.
Micah, how do you like kindergarten?
Do you like school? No.
Now standing with us here is Micah Pickering.
The one thing not typical about 5-year-old Micah is he is the face of a pro-life bill and came to Washington, D.C. recently when the House of Representatives announced they were going to vote on the pain-capable Unborn Child Protection Act, or Micahs Law. The bill would ban abortions at 20 weeks, protecting babies in the womb at the same age Micah was when he was born. Some doctors have argued the odds of an extreme micro-preemie baby like Micah surviving aren't good and don't recommend interventions. But the Pickerings are grateful they fought for their child's life.
This isn't something that you're asking to deliver your baby at 22 or 23 weeks. It's just something that you're faced, and when you're faced with that situation, most parents are like, yeah, let's save this baby.
This is your very personal family story. What's it been like to have that shared with so many and used to lobby and rally support behind the pain-capable Unborn Child Protection Act?
I never would have thought it, and it's an honor. I mean, it's an honor just to be able to be used, and that's why we come out here. Is we feel a responsibility to take advantage for the opportunity that God gives to tell people about Micah. And I think a lot of the statist people just don't have the knowledge. A lot of women and a lot of families, they like we've learned just by going through it. So hopefully just the public can get a greater knowledge that these things are happening, and these babies can be saved if they are given the chance.
It's been very surreal. Just, you know, we're used to our nice quiet life, and, you know, then we come out here and there's not much quiet about DC.
Clayton, you're a Baptist minister. Throughout this whole journey, how have you leaned on your faith and led your family in the faith during this time?
Well, because we had it before, and a lot of times, just as the sun, you know, clouds will come over the sun, and you know it's there, even though you can't see it. And a lot of times, those trials and situations, you don't know what God is doing, but you know who He is. I am what I am. So even though it looked like God was against us or doing bad things, you know, we know Him. Not just know about Him, we know Him. We're His body. We're His witnesses. And so that's what I believe God has done with Micah, is to give these unborn babies a face and a witness to the truth.
What do you hope your family's message is and Micah's message is to anyone who hears it?
I just hope Micah's message would be that this is the person that is inside that womb. You know, there is a person in there that will grow up, that will, you know, smile and laugh and play, and, you know, that you'll be able to hug and kiss and just be able to love. And that person is worthwhile. We were thrown into a situation that was less than ideal, and we chose to fight for him. And nothing about life is the same, but it's, you know, far and away better. It's just an incredible life.
People need to understand that from a pro-life standpoint, that's the aspect of, you know, he's as full of life when he was today as he was when he was, you know, first born. You know, he's just bigger, he's just stronger.
That's it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Remember, you can reach us anytime with questions, ideas, comments at ProLifeWeekly@EWTN.com. It's always great to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing you here again next week. Life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.